Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here. You are here for our Land Justice Futures webinar, Unmasking the 250th, the Indigenous Roots of U.S. Democracy and a Call to Interdependence. In this webinar, we seek to apply a critical historical lens to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We seek to learn about the indigenous roots of American democracy and discuss the unfinished work of truth-telling, repair, and right relationship for the next 250 years. We have the great honor and luck of speaking with condoled Mohawk clan mother Mommabear Louise Herne, Baratunde Thurston, and Reverend Sara Jolena Wolcott as our guest speakers. If you're new to us and our work, I'll give a brief introduction. Land Justice Futures works with movement partners and religious landowners to heal stories on sacred lands by creating land transitions that are rooted in racial and ecological justice. With a holistic exploration of how racism, colonization, the church, climate change, and private property all intersect, we help Christian communities across the United States engage with the land discernment process as a prophetic opening for healing and repair. We define land justice as having three parts: protecting land from extraction and speculation, regenerating its health, and expanding stewardship and governance to the communities who have been deeply harmed by dispossession and colonization, but who also carry the land-based wisdom we need to come back into right relationship. In this work, we are a small part of a much older, much larger movement led by Black, Indigenous, and farm worker communities. And we're grateful to be in cahoots with dozens of movement partners since the start of this work, just a few of whom you see here on this screen. Land Justice Futures is currently working with 20 religious communities across the US, supporting those communities at different levels of readiness and across many different kinds of situations. Whether those transitions are coming in the next 3 years or the next 20, we support the many, many steps along the discernment journey and the many ways that that can look, including hosting land justice workshops within your community to educate and organize, helping your community to develop internal clarity, and building trust and relationship with prospective local partners. You can find out more information about the many ways you can work with us by going to the link in the chat. And you can also take a look at our guides, articles, case studies, and other webinar recordings like this one. So I want to take a moment to look at the gallery here and see who is part of our Land Justice Network. If you are working with Land Justice Futures, if your community is working with Land Justice Futures, just maybe give a wave or put the raised hand. Oh, good. Yes. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. We're so glad you're here. Well, beyond that little wave, we'd also love to get a little bit of a glimpse of who's here. We're curious if this is some people's first time with Land Justice Futures, if folks are sisters or organizers within movement, we want to know. So we're going to start just a really quick poll to see who's here. So if you could just take 10 seconds to answer these questions. Who are you? And are you new to Land Justice Futures? And we'll just give about 30 seconds for folks to answer here. All right. I'm waiting for us to get to at least 75%. So if you haven't answered yet and you want to, please go ahead. Okay, great. We're going to close that in about 5 seconds. And yeah, it looks like we have a lot of sisters with us today. I'm going to close this poll and everyone else can see. We have About 40% of folks are sisters, another almost 20 are lay members of a religious community. We have some clergy, we have some land justice organizers and other organizers and movements, individuals interested in land justice. We got a lot of those. And yeah, we've got about 25% of folks who are here for the first time. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we hope that, yeah, you'll be joining this larger movement for repair and right relationship, or if you already are, creating those connections here today. Okay, well, as we begin our program, I'd like to give the mic to Mommabear, Wageлагatste, who's the condoled bear clan mother for Mohawk Nation, who will share the words before else so that we can begin our program. All right, there we go. Okay, Mommabear, the floor is yours.
Segos the Wagwego Wagerakats yung Gats Waxkaleo Giakusasne Janu Gidalo. Ne knew what Guanahalada one he's a lot the Yanski Skana is one of the news again. I usually do this all in my language, but today I'm gonna do it in English so there's more comprehension of the acknowledgement and the opening address. So I acknowledge all the people who've gathered today for the purpose of better understanding and in a shared work that is gonna be rolling out with all of us. And I bring to our minds together as one. And then I'll acknowledge our Mother Earth for all that she gives us, along with the water life and all the waters from the big ocean to the rivers to the lakes to even the smallest pond and to the rain. I gather our minds together as one. I acknowledge the strawberry plants, all the things that grow from the earth, the grasses, the medicines, the root life, the grass life, our three sisters, three sacred sisters, the corn, beans, and squash. I wrap our minds together as one and acknowledge those living things upon our Mother Earth. And then I take our minds to the place of acknowledging the bug life, the animal life, especially the deer that we use his antlers that symbolizes our male leadership and all that he has done for us by using his meat for our food and his hide for our clothing. And then I acknowledge the tree life, especially the leader tree, the maple tree, that it flows in the spring to be the first signal of the rebirth of the earth. And then I also acknowledge the great eagle who has been appointed to be our great protector and our warner of impending danger. So I wrap our minds together as one and acknowledge all those that continue to sustain us. And then I take our minds and turn it toward the sky. I acknowledge our four winds that come to help bring the good air that we breathe. And we also ask the strong winds, like the tornadoes and the hurricanes, to take pity upon us and the land that we live. And then I acknowledge the thunder beings, the nine appointed thunder beings that does their work every spring and every fall to awaken the earth and realign her energy points. I bring our minds together as one and acknowledge those elements. I take all our mind now toward the sky and acknowledge the two orbs, our brother, the sun, who continues to show up every day and be the fine example of masculinity and of our men to look to. And he is the big provider, big protector, and pulls forth new life from our Mother Earth. And then I turn to our grandmother Moon, who in our creation story was the daughter in our creation story, and she is the orb or the night sun that lights up our way around the pull of the waters in the oceans, the high tides and the low tides. And so I wrap our minds together as one and acknowledge our two orbs. And then I turn toward our sacred sky mother, Ujit Jizo, who fell from the celestial opening in the Pleiades and brought to us our consciousness and the sacred seeds from another world. And it was also through her motherhood and her expecting a baby that she sought to create a new world for her baby that was on the way. And she reached, along with the animals, the muskrat, the beaver, and other water animals, the mink, to retrieve from the ocean floor earth. And it was through her energy force that created the continents that we live on today. And her daughter, in turn, was born, and her daughter, in turn, gave birth to the two male twins that created our North Pole and our South Pole and continue to hold in rotation the balance of our Mother Earth. And so I acknowledge our sacred sky woman for the many things that she brought to this new world. And I wrap our minds together as one as we acknowledge her. And now I turn all our minds to her grandson that we call Sugwayat Dizo, or Talonghiwago, our great sky holder, and his twin brother Sahuiskala. And we acknowledge the duality of their powers of night and day, of cold and hot, and all the things that they were architects of on the earth that we live on today. So I take these words before our all else and acknowledge fully the ascension from the people to the earth, to the waters, to the winds, to the moon and the sun, to the stars, to our creator and creation itself. And may we be one. Thank you. Toge Igawanage.
Yeah, Mommabear, thank you so much for those words, for bringing us into a place of gratitude for the web of life and our place within it. And may we always remember the many gifts that we live among, and that we ourselves are gifts to each other. All right, I am gonna just share a few words to frame a little bit of our conversation today. As I mentioned, we have three wonderful speakers that will be weaving into this conversation, and I'll be starting with Mommabear here. But I want to kind of quickly just check in with this group of people who we have assembled here. In the weeks prior to this event, we had the chance to share a few questions and an essay for y'all's consideration. And if you've been reflecting about this national holiday, we'd like to invite just some initial quick thoughts and responses in the chat. Whether it's from, parts of the reflection questions or the essay or your own conversations or experiences over the last few weeks. I would love to ask what have been some of the insights or feelings that have emerged during this anniversary? And I'll put the question in the chat. And just, first thought is just fine. Doesn't need to be a dissertation. But would love to just hear what's moving in this group from this 250th. If there's any emotions or insights from these conversations or the writing that we shared out, we'd love to kind of ground in where the group's at too. So yeah, okay, hearing some embarrassment, longing for realness and healing, sadness, a feeling of complication. There's gratitude. There is I had difficulty celebrating because of the truth of our nation and the negativity of our government towards people and land. The holiday feels empty and strained. Let's see, what else do we have here? Sorrow, hope, overwhelm, mourning, lament. Trying to integrate what I see and what I know to be true. Yeah, that's a tough one. Very difficult to celebrate. Yeah, feeling tired. Yeah, democracy began way before 250 years. Yep, we'll be talking about that today. Detachment from celebration with so many other concerns. Yep. All right. Well, yeah, grief, despair. We're with you. Thank you for sharing. It's important to acknowledge what we're feeling as we move through this holiday, so that we don't bypass our own truth and experience and stay in our head, but actually bring our whole being into the conversation, bring our hearts into the conversation, our spirits into the conversation. Today's event is titled Unmasking the 250th. And there's a lot to unmask with this holiday and the broader national narrative that it's a part of. There's the unmasking of the dominant narrative that the 4th of July was about freedom, when at that time, an estimated 20% of the non-native population, descendants of trafficked Africans, were enslaved, separated from their lands, their peoples, their families, their cultures, and forced into brutal lifelong labor that founded the agricultural system and the wealth of this country. There's the unmasking of the true motives for independence. The self-interest of the founding fathers was very much in amassing wealth and land and power, through land speculation and settlement of indigenous lands, and through the expansion of the slavery-based economy. So those were the things that the founding fathers had vested interest in and that were being curtailed by limitations imposed by the British Crown. There's the unmasking, and this will be a big part of our focus today, unmasking a history that tries to erase the indigenous civilizations and history that is and was at that time already here on this continent, including the living indigenous lineage of democracy that inspired the early colonists for more than 100 years before the Declaration of Independence. The founding fathers were deeply influenced by the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, borrowing many ideas in their formation of the US government. However, as we'll soon discuss, they missed some foundational principles to that governing philosophy. So in this unmasking, we hope that our time together can support this country's continued evolution, that reorientation to what's real, as someone has said, and living into the ideals that we often espouse, like freedom, justice, equality. We don't educate ourselves and others to feel guilty or make others feel guilty. That's not very useful. But instead to feel empowered to see our reality more clearly, see our problems more clearly, and to shift our collective course. We do this so we can work to make things right and transform in ways that enable a more livable and just future for all people and all life here. I really like the spirit of Valerie Kaur's question from a few days ago. What if America is not dead, but is a country still waiting to be born? She had a viral speech about 10 years ago when she asked a similar evocative question that I think, Mommabear, you'll really enjoy, which is, what if this is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if the story of America is one long labor? So I find this framing orienting for me because it doesn't deny the anguish and pain that we're in. Labor is labor, but it grounds in a different timescale and a revolutionary hope. The final stage of birthing labor is the most painful and transition moment. It's the transition, as they call it. And transition feels a lot like dying, yet precedes the birth of the new. So that's the transition that we're a part of in the land justice movement. Doulas hospicing that which must end with us, and midwives supporting the birth of the new. So with that, Mommabear, I want to start with you. You care for your entire clan and nation through carrying out your responsibilities as a condoled Mohawk clan mother. It's your business to know what's going on and how people are doing, what the top issues or priorities are. And you're also part of this democratic tradition of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy that the founding fathers partially employed in setting up the US, but ignored some key pieces of. I'd love to just start off by asking, what has it been like for you to witness this 250th commemoration as an Indigenous woman, as Haudenosaunee, and as a clan mother? And you are muted, so I will gently ask you to unmute.
Okay. All right. Wow. Well, I guess I woke up thinking it was just another day. And years and years of witnessing this celebration was pretty riveting the other day because it became different. And it was standing in the recognition that I carry the weight of generations of resilience and resistance. And watching so many of people, including my own people, celebrate and having the truth of the birthday of this nation be, and the people that all were part of the establishment of it be silenced or have their story be sanitized. And so it brought me to a moment where it just demanded me to write a counter narrative and to put out into the universe the idea of a maternity test, because we're talking about mother law, we're talking about birth and the womb and the darkness. And I thought, well, this country, I demand a maternity test to be done on the United States of America to prove its origins and to call forth a truthful reflection of who it really is.
Mm.
You know, because you can't have a birthday without a birth, and a birth can't occur without a mother. And so demanding that our voices finally be heard, our history acknowledged in full, and our rights respected. So not just in this pageantry of, you know, fireworks and, you know, I just calling forth a real meaningful action. And to me, in any home, any place, in order to have stability and to have a lot of love, nourishment, and nurturing, you need a mother. But the United States of America was founded on the glorification of war and also the espousing of war heroes and men, mainly white men. So, but those men don't exist without the women in the story. The women are missing. The mother is absolutely missing. And you can't say the Statue of Liberty or Lady Freedom is any, they're only ideals, they're not real people. So for me, the birth isn't even finished. And I like what you said in your comment earlier, Sarah, it's not really the tomb, it's the womb, but I'm demanding a maternity test on the United States of America. And I'm really hoping that it checks itself. It checks itself. Um, because it's unraveling and it continue to exist under the falsehoods that it has projected into the universe to glorify itself in self-adulations of being the victor and the hero and the oh what does Mommabear often say, the illegitimate assumption of superiority, making them the only human being on this entire planet superior over all others. That needs to change and it needs to be corrected.
Mm-hmm. And that maternity test, What what would it tell America? What would it tell the people?
Ooh. Well, I've been doing some research. I just recently came back from Washington, D.C. I was at the Library of Congress in the basement, in the darkness of the basement of the building, and we found in its geography section a picture of the real America. And the real America is an Indigenous woman that is bare-breasted, barefoot. She has tobacco leaves for a skirt. She has a feathered hair dress, and she has black hair flowing like a river in the wind. And she has black coal eyes, and she's carrying her bow and her quiver, and she is free. And she stands in her allodial title, absolutely in control of her land and loving her people. And so that was a painting painted by Joan Blau in 1662, and it's in a room temperature controlled place. And it's so delicate, but it's so clear. Like the paint on the picture, I wish I could share it, is just so soaked into the pages. And she is as live today as she was in 1662, and she amplifies the original ideals of the first Europeans who came to our shores, and they had to go back and tell their kings and queens of Europe what America looked like. I mean, they could have painted a king, a conqueror, a snake, a bird, but they painted an Indigenous woman. Why? Because they seen something so entirely different that they could not understand. And so the cartographers and the painters of the day painted America as an Indigenous woman, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and she was in her absolute form. And I, call for that maternity test to really bring the mother back into the house so that there can be peace, balance, and that there's equal distribution of the economy for everybody. I think somebody's pulling up the picture here.
Hmm. Oh, thank you, Michelle, for putting the link there. Well, thank you for evoking that imagery of sovereign Indigenous woman as America's origins, and naming this element of our history of like when the early colonists came, they encountered something that they had never seen before. They encountered equality, they encountered individual liberty, they encountered a form of justice that they had never seen. They encountered a genderful relationship of humans that they had never seen before. They, experienced democracy, or they witnessed, I should say, a participatory democracy by way of the Haudenosaunee. I'd love to bring Baratunde you on, weave you in to join us. Hi, good to see you.
Hello, good to see you too. What up, Mama Bear? Err. That's gotta be your call sign. Mama Bear's in the house. Err. And hi, Sara Jolena and everybody. What up, sisters? So many sisters. I mean, I come from a tradition of sisters, so it's nice to be around sisters as well.
It's an important distinction, sisters, sisters, like, you know. Bertunde, I'd love to first ask you, I asked this question of Mama Bear, what it was
Mhm.
like to witness this 250th. You come from a Black freedom tradition, um, of Frederick Douglass, of so many freedom fighters who critique the hypocrisy of celebrating July 4th. And I'd love to weave in your voice of what's it been like to witness these 250th celebrations, and what do you sense or imagine your movement ancestors saying to you or to us right now?
They saying, get your shit together, bro. Pardon my French. They're probably demanding a few more wrestling matches. I don't think we had enough. Um, Tear up the White House lawn a bit more. so they could send more mosquitoes in to bite everybody's butt and suck their blood for payback. I think they would be thrilled at where I am and this current situation right here of this conversation. And they'd be like, about damn time. They would quote Lizzo at me. And because we're still here, I think they would be relieved and still expecting more, but grateful that despite so many attempts at erasure and delegitimizing and dehumanizing, that we're still here. And so, in their honor and with gratitude for all that they did, so I could eat this fig bar right now and look out at a beautiful Montana lake and be in this conversation with people who care and have big hearts and beautiful minds, I say to them, thank you. And these 250th celebrations for me have been meh. It actually did feel like another day. You know, there was in so many ways, and I tuned out from the official stuff. I was spent by trying to get here and trying to work with the recent information to me of some of the true founding story and these principles of American indigenous democracy rooted more in interdependence than independence. That by the time the actual day got here, I watched some World Cup. I cooked up some fish. I slept in. I did not take advantage of any of the 250th anniversary discounts, you know, and engage in commerce, you know, as certain founders obviously want us to do to mark freedom, is to create fiscal unfreedom for ourselves. So yeah, I just spent it in a sense of reverie and appreciation. And when I think about, I I will say this: Frederick Douglass was my first deep historical feeling of connection to the idea of the Fourth of July, outside of like hot dogs and belly aches, you know, and exploding things in the sky and trying not to burn down your neighborhood. And his "What to the Slave is the Fourth of July," delivered 76 years after the Declaration of Independence, is something that really landed for me. I performed it a few times in person and online. And it's still relevant today. And finding through beautiful relationship with various Haudenosaunee elders, including the opportunity to spend time with Mommabear clan mother Louise Herne here, has been a different kind of relief to a historical understanding of the beauty that's been here, of what we actually could earn the right to celebrate with explosions in the sky and reverie and time off and gathering and overeating. That we have a very, very, very beautiful story of belonging here if we would allow ourselves to belong to it in turn and not continue to lean into dominating, controlling, owning, separating, extracting. That ship is literally sailed and it's sinking. And so there is an exhaustion and a relief. I'm like, now we can get about the business of being. So I'm thrilled to continue into this and what it's meant for me. But as a representative of all Black people who've ever lived, I will just say that it's a good feeling. And I think it's something that many of my ancestors understood through their own indigenous relationship to earth, life, and land, and what love really is, that they brought here against their will, but out of necessity to exist here, that they found here in relationship with the nations already here, to create different economies and different governing structures and different familial structures outside of this controlling, sad, tiny, unimaginative story of strictly not needing someone else, which is such a big lie, and of just independence as like the highest calling of existence, which is rather pathetic, and deserves, whoever carries that deserves a hug and a reminder of our connection. So let's hug it out, America. Let's reconnect. Let's get about the business of being together. We got a lot of good things to do. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're so grateful that you're here, and thank you for weaving all of what you just shared into the conversation. I think just to get into what you had referenced, there is so much more of a beautiful story that we could earn the right to celebrate. And by living it out, by reconnecting with it, by taking the time to truly understand the rootstock of our democracy, the philosophy and the ideals and the culture that they're grounded in. And this came in my mail yesterday. Hey.
Yeah.
Let's get into these principles of Haudenosaunee democratic tradition and how they're practiced. We have Mommabear here, who is an authority of this as a condoled clan mother within the Longhouse. And we have you, who sat with elders for so many hours to support in this just released book, American Indigenous Democracy, A Call to Interdependence. And in this, there's so much good stuff in here. I'll share, you had these really wonderful bookmarks made, which I'm using for everything now, that name some of the important principles that are especially neglected in the way that the U.S. government forged their own system. And I'm just going to read them out loud real quick. And then Baratunde, if you can share briefly, like, what was it like to learn about these principles? Great. And Mommabear, if you can share a little bit more about how they're practiced. So I'm going to read them out loud. 1, women share equal power in governance.
Pause you right there.
What?
Pause you right there. This is a beautiful moment.
There are no numbers.
No, also that, but that is a first one. I got to slip right into it because of the opportunity you just afforded.
Yes.
I wrote that, and Mommabear and Michelle Shenandoah in March of this year said, we got to update that language, young brother. We got to update that language. It is not about sharing equal power. It is not about demanding the status of men. It is about asserting the law authority of mother. And so the updated language and what is actually in this book, corrected from that temporary bookmark, is the declaration of the first principle as women at the center of governance. Women at the center. And as a man, it's like hella important for me to get that right and to understand it and to feel it and to also share, man. There's mostly sisters here with us, but there's some bros here. It doesn't mean there's nothing for us to do as men. It doesn't mean we're demoted or have no place. There is a balance. There is a role for all. And there's an acknowledgement of unique positioning, unique authority, unique power, especially through the power to create life, even if not exercised. Just the potential energy of that is so significant that it must be respected. And so mother as source of life, as source of love, and as source of law is like, if there's a first one, I think that's the first one. So thank you for breaking out the beautiful bookmarks and for the chance to correct them, because we ran those off our crew real fast and it was based on an outdated understanding.
Well, thank you for that because yeah, I mean, Mama Bear, I've heard you and Michelle talk about this too. It's like it's not equal power. It's something else entirely. Like
Yeah.
that's why the whole conversation about feminism doesn't really resonate a lot for Indigenous women because it's different. It's about being central. So thank you for that correction. So
Yeah.
women are at
At
the
the
center
center of
of
governance.
governance.
Yeah.
Boom. That's number one. And then we have humans live in reciprocity with the natural world. Every decision should consider 7 generations ahead. Peace is the highest calling of government. Imagine that.
Hmm.
And law is rooted in the sacred and aligned with life.
Yes, yes. All the snaps. Brief commentary. The peace one, um, there's so many layers to so much of this. And what you have just articulated is it's like an acceptable distillation of like core pillars. There's no way to fully represent like such a complex web and system of governance as is ascribed by the Great Law of Peace. And you got a clan mother here to keep us correct on that. And these are universally applicable principles that don't involve any of us trying to become Mohawk or become Haudenosaunee or roll up on a longhouse or don some garb that is not ours to wear without invitation. They're universal. If you're close to the earth, you're close to these principles. You're close to life, you're close to these principles. The peace one, there's layers on that bear a brief expansion. Peace is the highest calling of government. Peace requires justice. Peace requires justice. It's not just like vaguely no war. There's an assertion of what peace is, and that is justice. And within that, justice requires the absence of abuse of anyone. You cannot be having systems of abuse and call that justice and call that peace and be in right relationship and have a democracy. You just can't. It's not allowed. It's inadmissible. So there's requirements and stuff baked into this. And it's just like with the stuff we know, no justice, no peace. I grew up chanting that with my family because we've been new. Like we all know this stuff. It's not actually secret, cryptic, encoded knowledge. It doesn't require a patent or a fee. It requires acceptance. So the path here, the acknowledgement that I want to offer and what it was like is soul uplifting, expanding, too many coincidences and synchronous moments to be explained away by mere luck or fortune. Loretta Afraid of Bear Cook, wisdom keeper from the shirt-wearing tradition of the Oglala Lakota people, married Tom Cook, Gunate Goyate Tom Cook, a Mohawk man. And that bridge of Lakota, who celebrate their tree and the sun dance, and the Mohawk, who celebrate the tree of peace, these two trees came together. and they're connected in a family. And Tom's sister, Gudgie Cook, married Jose Barrero, who's the editor of this book, a Taino man. Two more nations come together. Chief Beverly Cook, their cousin. And I come into this not just because I read some books or answered a phone call, but relationships. Loretta and Amelia Rose Barlow had a deep relationship. Amelia taps in with Mata Zepeda and Jen Brandel and Jonathan and folks in High Acres, Vermont. And we all get caught up in this invitation around exploring interdependence. And that lands us near Akwesasne in a house, in deep relationship and ceremony and story sharing 2.5 years ago, March 2024. And that opens this up. So the path has been laid. It's very relational. It's very lovingly corrected constantly. Constantly. And we try to, pay it forward well and extend that same invitation and consideration forward. It's been humbling. It's been exciting. It's been like, there's good news in history. I'm not used to that. You think about the historical reveals that you've had in your own life, and there's usually like another mass grave you didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's another villain. There's a hero who actually was a villain. We got to change street names and take people's names off of buildings and move statues into archive. Like it's rarely like a yay
Yeah.
when you start rooting around historically in this land, talking about what happened, what had really happened. What had happened was in America. Oh, I don't even want to know. Let me watch some reality TV. This ain't that. This is so exciting.
Yeah.
This is like word. There's multinational sovereignty, interdependence, multiracial, no chattel slavery, peace, justice, intertwined, women, kids. Are you kidding me? And it was offered? What?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
explicitly invitational to the people we celebrate today. And they were like, we prefer empire and money and small goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's their choice. We don't have to repeat it. So it's felt like such a rare rejuvenation
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, we actually, this is good news. I love sharing this.
Yeah.
I hate sharing so much history stuff because like, okay, you need to sit down, get some whiskey, or get some weed, whatever your flavor is. Get some ashwagandha, whatever your thing is. You're gonna have to sit down for this one. No, you got to stand up for this one. You got to jump,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to, with your whole chest, embrace this. Be angry. I saw somebody from Charlotte, North Carolina, in the chat being like, "I'm so mad that I wasn't taught this stuff." I feel you. That's justified, and then be glad that you do know.
Right.
That's what it's felt like. Thank you. I
Yeah.
will mute myself now. That was a bit of a run. I appreciate y'all.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for also getting us in the mood to really receive, the opportunity that is here to choose something different, to not choose empire and private property and independence, but instead choose these principles, choose interdependence, choose the real history that we could be honoring and connecting with. Mommabear, I saw your lovely grandson there for a moment. Um, can you share anything that feels really important about what it means to leave these principles in practice? I mean, you are living out these practices, these philosophies as as an authority in the Longhouse, as a clan mother. What would you like to share about what these look like in practice?
Turn my mic on. Well, Baratunde, you just get me all gassed up and ready to roll out my semi truck here. But I think the living practice of it is, um, I had this moment one time we were in a conflict. I actually was with Gudgy and Jose, and there was police and there's Indigenous people on the other side, and there was a lot of trauma. People were hurt. There was a scuffle. There was, the brutality of the police on the people who didn't have weapons, and it was a fight over land. And they were trying to encroach on the Six Nations reservation, and so we arrived there, of course, a day late. But there was all these people that were hurt, and I just remember, ritualizing the pain, bringing ceremony to the trauma that was inflicted. And I remember when the women stepped up and they did what the protocol was to meet and greet the trauma and acknowledge it, and the men stood behind us. It was so powerful because each of the genders knew their place within that space. And there was a lot of tears, there was singing, there was prayer, there was a language, there was a cleaning off, a dusting away, and it was just a beautiful moment where I seen the pinnacle of what it could be, where you can enter into conflict, but then find its resolve toward peace. Like the little bookmark says, the highest order of governance is peace. Is how do you negotiate that peace? And it's just not peace between two parties, it's your own inner peace, how to resolve that within yourself. And that was a moment where we helped those people come back out of the trauma and to be present in their families and lives again. in recognition of standing up for what they believed. And so we have the tools, we have the mechanism, we had the knowledge standing in front of them. And, I'll just never forget. And even thinking about it now, it still makes the hair on my toes stand up, or on my arm, because it was just so right. And I just felt like nature backed it up. The universe was present, and it was all in balance. And for me, living it, and to name our babies in the lawn house in a name lifting ceremony, or seeing a marriage, or just this past weekend, I sat in a Bear Clan meeting, and we created the division of power and shared responsibility, where we brought our issues to the well, and we picked our most important priority issues, and we put it on the floor, and it crossed the house back and forth, and we debated it. And we made one decision after all those issues that were put on there. But we did walk away with a decision, and this is a governance that nobody gets paid to be at. People are there because they believe it, and because it's so infused into their DNA that, and we leave the emotion out of it. And what we try and do is to bring reason, to bring the higher intellect of the human being into the front of our thinking, to be able to rationalize a truth, and not to be willy-nilly about anything, but to be able to disseminate in front of us, and then put it back together as a whole. And that was so powerful. We were all pumped to go, yeah. And just to see the new leadership emerging, to me, was my gift. Like, these younger people who are studying this anyways, or what, that's the reciprocity, is that you begin to refill those seats, or those positions of duty and responsibility in the younger generation. And then even the younger ones, like my grandson, sat there and saw it playing out. You know what I mean? And it's not something you learn, you just live it. And there's nothing, education, yes, I believe in it 100%, but you have to be careful with education, because it is an indoctrination to the empire. And so with this kind of living education is, at the age of 4, you're being able to see this, and you grow up with it, seeing it all the time. And then you see kids employing that in the playground, so that resolve to peace. And it gives them a forward vision to be able to be okay with conflict, but then to have the tools to resolve that particular conflict. And the living practice of it, I've seen so many times over and over again. And when I study history, and how there's one historical moment where Washington had a general by the name of Proctor was meeting with the Six Nations chiefs, and he came over a hill. I think it was in Albany. It was before Confederation. And he said, "Oh, it's such a spectacle to see these chiefs show up with women sitting next to them," because his European, Eurocentric male mind could not comprehend that a woman could have a political thought. And yet here in Haudenosaunee world, women are the politics, and they're also the power, and they're also the law. You know what I mean? They're the denominator between, are we going to go to war, or are we going to uphold peace? So there, she's kind of like that balance. She's sought for. They come to me for wisdom, for knowledge, for just being listened to. So I'm a full spectrum clan mother. I drive the bus, I'm at the bank, I'm the teacher, I'm the professor, I'm the doctor. I'm many things. I'm the doula, the midwife, but part of that is the responsibility. At the end of the day, that you're kind of stitching up the trauma that's been inflicted by colonization for the last 300 or 500 years. And then you get to this point of confederation, and I thought, wow, there's the fact that the Haudenosaunee Six Nations chiefs, I think when they were given citizenship, and probably at the turn of the century, like in the 1920s, they saying, "Oh, you can have U.S. citizenship, Haudenosaunee, but only the men, the women can't have it." And then their chiefs refused it, saying, you can't be a country without including the mother. And that's why when I talk, and I talk about this maternity test, because we certainly know who the paternal order is, but where's the mother in the house? And so when I talk about this maternity test, I talk in a way that says, well, who is your mother? And the United States really has to go back far deep into the rabbit hole or to the roots of its beginning to recognize that she's an Indigenous woman. And that's who America is. And they've tried so hard to vilify her, to cover her up, to colonize her, to beat her into submission. And to this day, that carries forth in missing and murdered Indigenous women. Why do they have to beat her into submission? Why do they have to put the colonial cloak of conquest upon her? Because she's the clear title to the land. Because the land is a woman, and the woman is part of the she's got the land within her. And according to our great law of peace, even our peacemaker said, from this day forward, the progenation of your nations will be breast in the mothers of your nations. And even Jagu says that our peace mother and the mother of all nations was a woman who understood in her brilliance that she had to accept this message and turn away from war and become a mother of peace. And so the mother in a home and in a country becomes the referee, or the one that balances out the disputes and the balance of power, and the equal distribution of abundance, so that nobody starves, nobody's alone. So whenever delegations come to meet me, the first question I'll say, where are your women? Where is the mother of your land and your people? So I in no way, and to me, it's just common biology. It's so sensical, because nobody takes a breath in this life unless they come through that door of a mother. And so it's so simple, but people complicate it in these layers of legislation, trying to control her body, her birth, her choice. And in Indigenous world, that it's a mother's world, and she has the sole responsibility of making sure everybody gets along.
Hmm. I'm glad you shared that story about conflict and your grandson being in the longhouse and witnessing what was going on. I think something that's important to name is Haudenosaunee democracy is participatory democracy. It's not representative, which for folks in the U.S., like we might not even really have much of a concept for what that looks like in practice, but it means like the people are where the power is, and are the ones who are shaping what happens through clan mothers and chiefs. And I'm glad you named too the particular power that the clan mothers have in issues of war and peace and land, and in selecting and recalling leadership if they are acting in ways that are abusing others or are self-interested. I think too that there's a way in which we can like apply our own lenses to another form of governance. And I think it's really important to say, like, the great law of peace, if we wanted to learn it, you'd have to like sit down for a week and listen to the oral history. So I know we're just scratching the surface here. We're just barely dipping our toes in, and this is a great resource, as is the Rematriated Voices PBS series, for folks who want to learn a little bit more. I know we're just barely getting in there. I would love to weave in Sara Jolena at this point, to talk a little bit more about this history that you both are referencing, about what was on offer to these founding fathers, and what happened. Sara Jolena, welcome into the circle here. Your ancestor was one of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence. In fact, one of your ancestors, Oliver Wolcott, was part of the delegation that traveled to meet the Haudenosaunee Confederacy for that diplomatic mission in 1775 that let the Confederacy know that the European colonists were indeed going to take their advice and unify, and were asking for their support or their neutrality in the revolution against the British. That delegation would have sat in ceremony with the Haudenosaunee leaders and, made promises of peace and friendship and respect. All those things were broken, of course. But you have been someone who have really dug into this history, both in your work around decolonization initiatives where you live in Haudenosaunee territory, but also from a personal perspective. And as a theologian and a minister who does this work with a spiritual lens as well. What do you make of this aspect of our history? And why might it be important for us now? What can it offer us in this political moment? And especially offer us who are in a movement of repair and right relationship? And if you just want to say hi too, you can. Great. Are you there? You look a little frozen.
I think she's very frozen.
Sara Jolena. All right. Well, can you hear us, Sara?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. It was such a big question that like the internet couldn't handle it, you know? I'm like, oof. All right, Sarah Jane, how much time do we have?
Not too much, so
Okay. I mean, first, it's just such a pleasure to listen to Mommabear and Baratunde. I could listen to you all for hours talking. I feel, I guess, it's a balm. It's a balm to hear you. It's a balm to my soul. It's a balm to my spirit. And I feel the presence of my ancestors in gratitude that this moment is possible, because they didn't know how to do this. I don't think they knew how to sit in the circle. I don't think they knew how to listen. I think they sat, but their ears were clogged. You know, they were clogged with the doctrine of discovery. They were clogged with the doctrine of domination. It was like they heard but didn't hear. They saw and didn't see. And they felt and didn't feel all at the same time, right? And it's that jarringness, that kind of like, oh, it was right there, and yet that promise was broken. The promise was made and the promise was broken. And what happens when you break promises? Well, you get climate change. You get climate change. That's what happens when you break the promises to the Indigenous women and men of this country. So you get climate change, and you get the fires, and you get the heat domes, and you get a pattern of domination in which somehow exploding fireworks is worth it, even though we know that it led to a category purple, like heat, like air pollution, right? The same day in Black and brown communities all across DC, it was unsafe to go outside. And they knew that beforehand. They still made those fireworks go off. So that doctrine of domination is still here, which means these stories, this message, it's a story, it's part of an old message, the message of this land and these waters. Like, may the ears of our people now be able to hear it. May our hearts now be able to receive it, because it's been said for a long time. And the eagle doesn't have to be an eagle of war. It can also be, as Mommabear is saying, an eagle of protection. And we can look at the symbols, and we can look at these histories, and we can do something different. So I didn't know any of this stuff growing up, right? I was grew up in a really nice white Quaker family in California. And we were really good folks. And the story I was told about this country is a story I'm sure many of you were told about this country and about my family and my ancestors. I never knew that Oliver Wolcott sat at a sacred fire. And because I didn't know that, I didn't know that part of my inheritance is sitting at sacred fire and sitting in ceremony. Because I didn't know these histories, because they weren't part of what it meant to be me. It meant I never got to ask the question of who is the mother of this country. even though it was staring at me in the books. I got those books with those images as a kid, when America and a Native woman were the same thing. I'm young enough that I got that. So thank you to all the education reformers who came before me. So at least there was a little tiny bit somewhere. But when you don't know, when you are brought up in this masked society and everything's superficial, where do you go for your source? Where do you go when you come into conflict if you don't know what the principles of peace are, and all you have is the principles of independence, which are nothing without independence? Independence is it's just ridiculous. It just floats and just goes away without interdependence. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how we can get through this moment of climate change, of ongoing racism, of the horrific genocides in Palestine, of the continual deportation of peoples who are neighbors and many of whom are indigenous to this place. I don't know how we can get through these moments to something better without the gesture of return, and without the gesture of beginning to ask that question of what does it mean to rematriate ourselves and our histories? What can we do to return the sacred to the mother? I'm still inspired, Mommabear, by this phrase, returning the sacred to the mother. It continues to work in me and to challenge me and to invite me into something. So thank you.
Sara Jolena. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead. Well,
you
keep referencing some moments in history. Can you give just a couple of things that people can share at their next dinner party?
Dinner party. Yeah. So, I think one of my favorite quotes from the 1600s is the Jesuits who say, they're talking about the Wendat peoples in this case, because this whole land is free. This whole land is a land of freedom. The home of the free, the home of the brave. Like that phrase belongs to the entirety of the indigenous peoples of this continent. And Father Lalemant in 1644 says, I do not believe that there is any people on earth freer than they. And that's an incredible statement in 1644. In a different part in Nova Scotia, they're talking about the Micmac people, and they say they consider themselves better than the French, for they say, you are always fighting and quarreling amongst yourselves, whereas we live peaceably. You are envious, and at all this time slandering each other. You are thieves and deceivers. You are covetous, and are neither generous nor kind. As for us, we have a morsel of bread, and we share it with our neighbor. We are richer than you. And the Jesuits, meanwhile, at that time, felt that their faith required them to submit not only our wills, but our minds and our judgments and all the sentiments of man to a power unknown to our senses, to a law that is not of earth, that is entirely opposed to laws and sentiments of corrupt nature. So for the Jesuits and the missionaries at the time of coming to this continent, the freedom they saw here, the freedom of women in particular, was an outrage. It was an outrage to them. They did not know how to handle it. And yet it totally led to the Enlightenment, led to ideas such as freedom, equality, and liberty. So a couple of dates that might be helpful to kind of fast forward into the 1700s, into this history of Haudenosaunee contribution. 1744, this is a nice one. Onondaga chief Canestego, at the Treaty of Lancaster, he holds up a bundle of arrows and a gesture, and that's a gesture that correct me if I'm wrong here, Mommabear, but that for many Haudenosaunee peoples would have echoed the teachings of the peacemaker holding up a bundle of arrows. And he encourages the 13 fires, as they called the colonists, my ancestors at that time, to come together in unity instead of acting as separate entities. Ben Franklin was at that gathering, writes up Canestego's speech into a pamphlet. That pamphlet receives a lot of attention. Many years later, when symbolizing the coming together of the colonies, George Washington rides to the cities holding that 13 arrows. They're holding 13 arrows together. Today, that same bundle of 13 arrows is on the Great Seal of the United States. It's right there in plain sight, friends. And so there's this process and this history of the foreground becomes the background. Just see what is actually in front of you. That bundle of arrows is on the seal. There is no question where that comes from. So that's symbolic, and it's a call for unity. That coming together, that unification is one of the great has been acknowledged many times. It happens again in 1754 with the Albany Congress, who again encourages the colonists to come together. And Franklin, from that speech, from listening to Sachem Hendrick Thayungoin, who is a member of the Mohawk Bear Clan, from that speech, Franklin draws up what we think of now today as the Albany Plan. He also makes a very strong case for the importance of Indigenous land sovereignty. In 1775, you kind of mentioned this earlier, Sarah Jane, that after a 3-month period, my ancestors, one of 3 commissioners who went to negotiate with the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and they passed a wampum belt and gave thanks to them for instructing them and supporting them in the creation of what becomes the 13 colonies and becomes the U.S. Declaration and Constitution. In 1776, while independence was being debated in June at the Continental Congress for over a month, over 21 Haudenosaunee Confederacy people were invited and observed the operations. They stayed at Independence Hall. They offered strong advice and guidance. And their contributions were appreciated. And towards the end of this period, in recognition of the colonists' hard work, they had a ceremony in which the Onondaga chief there honored the president of the Continental Congress, John Hancock, with the Haudenosaunee name, Karanduan, or the Great Tree. So there's just, and I could go on for a long time. These are just a couple snippets, right? Because there's hundreds of conversations that happen across many, many, many people. And but you just can't dispute. In fact, the U.S. government has not disputed this. And in 1988, they passed a resolution in both houses of Congress acknowledging and thanking the Haudenosaunee Confederacy for their contributions to democracy. It's on congressional record that they recognize that the democracy doesn't come from Greece and Rome. In this, like I was going to say this century, last century, very recently. So it's there. It's there. So, okay, I'm going to pause there. So, and what else, all of these histories, all these things, they missed what Mommabear and Baratunde talked about, right? They missed the role of the mother. They missed kinship, right? They missed that matrilineal system. And what does it mean to have earth and life at the center? So they got some pieces, but they missed that life at the centerpiece. And I don't think that they understood what it meant to choose to be Rome would lead to the situations that we're in today. I don't know if they understood the implications for their descendants, as well as the great unfairness and extent and just the ridiculousness of attempting for equality when they were not creating an equal society at all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sara Jolena. Yeah, to your point, they had so much blocking their ears. I mean, they got a few things like federalism or, freedom of religion and speech and, a couple of ideas that they, partially enacted, but they missed these foundational orientations to life, to the sacred, to the mother, to peace. I'd love to close with a question about interdependence to all 3 of you. This has been a month that has continued to celebrate our independence. And, I'm curious your thoughts on what has it meant to our country and what has it done to our country to celebrate and center independence so much? And what could it mean if we centered our interdependence? What might that look like? What might that enable? How would we know we're practicing it? You don't have to answer all those things because we don't have that much time. But, any of those threads you want to pull on, I invite you for this kind of closing round. And yeah, whoever feels ready to pop can start. You're breathing in, Baratunde, you go. But you're muted.
I'm always breathing in. It's how I stay alive. Um, Maybe it's just me. I don't know how the rest of y'all do it, but thank you, Sara Jolena, and you've also been a part of my journey in this. I attended 2 July 4th ago a streaming session that you did about this history that I think Mata Zepeda tipped us off to in one of our group chats, and that's been part of the learning and the unfolding. So, thank you, and thanks for this rich timeline, which added even more things that I just learned just now. Just now. I was this exact years old when I learned about that witnessing part. Interdependence. Bear. Mommabear. I'm repping the bear patch on my shirt. I didn't even realize that till this now. We bound. That's what it's like. Great state of California repped here, but we'll go Bear Clan for that one. I think it would be the ultimate liberation. I think that I've returned to the language of small thinking because it's somewhat judgmental, but it still allows room for some grace. That's my intention. That the people who are committed to this story of selfishness in the individual sense, as opposed to the collective sense, are also suffering. They were born into a story they didn't write, into a stew they didn't cook. The pot was already on boil. And many, many, many of us just don't know. They literally don't know any better or haven't had the luxury of or made the commitment to sitting still enough to feel a different truth. And so we go with the popular truth, which is hustle and grind and earn and spend and extract and separate and call that winning. And it's exhausting. And Sarah, it's climate change, right? The consequence of that thinking is pretty obviously zero sum. But life isn't. Life is a cycle, right? Life is a regenerative circle. And the more we recognize that we're a part of it, woven into it, then the less we have to fear of losing out or losing it all. We get to continue. Maybe not in the selfish form that we know. They have all these billionaire cats trying to live forever with the lowest quality of life ever. They just want to look like Skeletor and be vampires sucking their children's blood. And they don't sleep. So why are you trying to stick around, bro? You could live forever through the tree, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could just be here enough to give enough of yourself to live forever in that way. But we got to set something aside to gain that. And so I'm hopeful that that this moment is not just about the people who are currently perceived as powerless or excluded or downtrodden gaining something at the expense of those who are currently perceived as having everything. I don't think that's what's happening. I think we're all trying to get free here from different conditions, but we're all trapped in something. And the people who think they got the most are also trapped the most because they don't actually see what the rest of us get to see. And that interdependent way is a freedom. It's a pass to let go. Let go of the struggle that you in. It's actually not good for you, homie. It's not good for you. It's definitely not good for us. But it's not just, you don't have to care about woke nothing. You don't got to care about black people, about women, about babies, about immigrants, about Palestine. You can still just care about you. But just make that you a wider net. Make it a we, you know? And what would it feel like to put that burden down? We kind of control the whole world. Ugh. I want to take a nap, bro. That's exhausting just thinking about that. If that's your job, no. You need time off. You need work-life balance. You need to let the eagle carry some of this for you. You need to let your woman speak some for you. Come on, man. It's a lot of work to be talking all the time. I do it for a living. It's too much. So I hope that there's a joy and a release and a relief for everybody, including those who think they don't need it, because they're taking all these extra drugs. They hopped up on stock price highs, trying to fill some hole that'll never be filled through that path. And this is a more grounded and truer path that still allows. And the last little thing, I'm gonna shut up. Sovereignty and interdependence. Sovereignty and interdependence. Sovereignty and interdependence. It's not merely a trade of, well, you used to have a self and now you're in a mush with everybody else. The only way to be interdependent is to have a self with which to enter, right? I connect with you because there's an I that's not you. Otherwise, we both lost in the sauce. And so we don't lose the thing that we're afraid of losing, but we gain so much of what we're missing, and we're filling with drugs and money and all this other stuff. Thank you. I love y'all. Bear o'clock.
Thank you, Baratunde. Sara Jolena, do you want to share any thoughts on interdependence and what that might mean? And then Mommabear, you can have the last word.
I think, one step is to not be afraid of that second part of that word, to be a little bit less afraid of the dependency. Like when my ancestors came here, they were so dependent upon the indigenous peoples of this place to survive, to learn how to grow food, to learn how to eat, to the houses they built, the homes they built, how to do diplomacy, having to learn how to work with wampum, to learn an entire new cultural way of diplomacy, which is not part of where they came from, but they had to learn it to survive. And it's like this, to be human is to be dependent on each other, and it's like I have had the honor of holding babies, and it's like that dependency is so sacred. Hold that dependent babe that needs you to survive is such a sacred opportunity, is such a sacred moment. And to be held in that moment of dependency is like, that's so close to the holy. And to like lean into that dependency as sacred, and to lean into actually our very interdependency, that we do need each other, that we have to come together in unity. And for me in my life, it's actually, that dependency, to embrace that, I had to to get there, I had to be in a place of grief. I had to let myself, in my case, it was the grief of my father dying, which happened shortly before. It kind of happened as I was in seminary and doing all this research, and was invited to, a gathering at Six Nations around repolishing the Silver Covenant chain. But because I was in grief, I could hear something I don't know how much I could have heard it before. And because I was in a place of openness. And so it's like to let ourselves feel all that grief and anger that we were mentioning earlier at the call, and let that lead us. Let that be that opening, that bridge, that little narrow bridge, because it's a narrow bridge sometimes. This path towards the great right, towards the roots of peace, feels not always easy. But we can move towards that interdependency. And I believe that to move towards that interdependency, to me, increasingly also entails coming back to the mother, and coming back to I'm so curious about the relationship between interdependency and rematriation, and how those pieces intertwine in our spirits, and in the way we walk, in land justice, in the work that we do in the world, the concrete actions that we move forward with. So I'll pause there. Yeah.
Thank you, Sara Jolena. Thank you. Mommabear, what would it mean for us to move towards interdependence? Anything you want to share to close us? And then I'll move into some next steps and a quick closing prayer.
Right. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm going to go inside the Gonna Let Go of the Great Law of Peace. And there's a provision within the Great Law of Peace that talks about, after the peacemaker had established all the articles within the law, at the end he said, so any man or woman or even country or any nation who traces its roots through the white roots of peace to the source is allowed to take shelter beneath its long leaves, and they will be protected. So because that I still exist, there's still a provision within that law that can be enacted in the recognition that we're still a nation, and that the United States is a nation, And it would probably be to the greater good of all the people within your country established under the Great Seal of the United States to issue an SOS to the Confederacy of the Great Law of Peace to say our country is in trouble. It's on a train wreck and we need help. So it would be really helpful if the mothers of the United States of America wrote up a nice letter and sent it to the Confederacy of the Haudenosaunee as an SOS to say, please help us again because we've lost our way. We don't understand what confederation means. We don't understand what union means. We don't understand what the Great Peace means. And we need help. We're desperate for help because it is for the benefit of our mothers and our children. Can you still help us again to remind us of the original meanings of the Great Law of Peace? And so if that letter would arrive at Onondaga at the Great Confederacy of the Haudenosaunee, and even specifically focus on calling forward the clan mothers to help the United States of America, then I can show up as needed to return people to the center, to the source, to the mother, and I will not let you down. But believe you me, I can't act in any kind of reciprocity or any extension of a hand unless you ask for that help. And to me, that will put the United States of America and its voting citizens in a place of recognition that it needs help and it needs to be reminded of who its original mother is. So, part of that interdependence means we're still here. And it's okay. You can admit, hey, we're in trouble. Can you help us? And to me, that's the practice. And Kajikuk will always say culture happens inside the practice, not just talking about it. So unless yous do, I can't do. But to truly understand and recognize the patriotic pageantry and the lies that come with it, and celebrate it, that's the mask that glorifies this kind of false, again, supremacy, right? So it's important to acknowledge the origins of the United States, how it was intertwined with the Haudenosaunee, and again, to call for our help because, Sara Jolie just said earlier, we helped you survive on this land and we can help you again. And that would be a true testament, absolute true testament of interdependence and an acknowledgement that, that we can become more powerful and we can uphold peace and be a great example to the rest of the world that so desperately seeks it. And, but, I can't do unless you do. I'll end with that.
Yeah, what, Mommabear? Well,
Well,
sounds like we got to get to doing, get to writing, get to some organizing. And thank you for that call to our participation in interdependence, being also admitting our own vulnerability and reaching out to towards each other, and recognizing when we need help because we certainly do. And within ourselves, the broader collective, this history reminds me that we have some of the answers amongst ourselves and amongst the wisdom traditions that so many carry. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mommabear, Baratunde, Sara Jolena. This has been such a great honor, edifying and profound, and a
Thank
balm.
you. Thank you, Sarah Jane Bradley. Well held.
Well, I know we could be here for days, but I appreciate what we got into, and I want to name some next steps that people can take, if they are interested in moving towards interdependence, moving towards this history and this invitation that our speakers have been casting here. First, this book is gold. This book is life, really. It's so great. Please read it. You can buy it you can order it online with the link in the chat. But you'll be reading from Haudenosaunee elders about this democratic tradition and this hidden history. Mommabear's in it, Michelle's in it, Baratunde's in it. So please check that out. You can also keep learning through the PBS series, Rematriated Voices, with Michelle Shenandoah. That is available online. There are 6 episodes, and they go into lots of different elements of Haudenosaunee life and history and governance as well. Also, there is an offer that I want to name, that Sara Jolena is hosting a virtual circle for processing some of this history and the 250th anniversary. So more discussion than maybe just the witnessing that you all did today. But that's on July 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern, and there is a link in the chat to sign up. And of course, as always, you can keep learning about this work, about land justice, about the movement of rematriation and right relationship through our resource library. There's a bunch of articles and case studies and videos that you can check out. We'll also be having another land justice liturgy this September, and another round of the Mother Law and Complicit No More series that we did 2 falls ago, that you can organize your own watch and discussion groups with. So there will be more about that coming up. And lastly, of course, if you are interested in working with us to discern how land justice can be incorporated in your own community's situation, please be in touch with us. There is a link in the chat as well about how to start that process. I know we're a little bit over, but we can't end in logistics. We just can't. It's not right. So
Jane, before you read, I just want to acknowledge what the offer that Mommabear just said, and I wasn't able to respond in the moment because I was so overwhelmed with emotion. And I just want to say, yes, we will do that. We need you. We need your help. And my ancestors hear you, and I hear you. And on behalf of my people, I want to say yes. And I invite all others to join with me in that yes.
Maybe let's all just actually take a moment to feel our yes, or feel our maybe. Maybe it's just not a no, but it's a maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe let's all just take a moment to feel Mommabear's invitation and our own response to it.
Yes.
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 Yes. If anyone else wants to come off mute, I'm canning my prepared poem and instead opting for a collective poem of yes, if those who feel so moved would like.
Yes.
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 Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, Mama.
Yes.
Yes.
That was my maybe favorite ending of a call. Yes, Mommabear.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm waiting. I'm brown and I'm sticking around. So yeah, I will yell into the universe the day I see the letter.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Mommabear and Baratunde and Sara Jolena once again. Thank you for being part of this movement. Thank you for your yes. And we'll see you soon.